I always have a massive appreciation for guests on the show who are willing to give back, share their knowledge as the experts that they are, and be able to create content and share that with the rest of the world. Today's guest is a former NAIA basketball player who is utilizing his platform nowadays to share that with the rest of the world and help bless the lives of others, especially the younger generation. This is an amazing conversation talking about life and basketball. You don't want to miss it. This is the Gametime Guru. So,
what time is it? Game time!
This is the Gametime Guru Podcast, where I interview sports figures from all over the world to help deliver a panoramic view on sports. So whether you're a former athlete, one of the crazies, or simply a casual sports fan, this is the perfect show for you as we peel back the curtains and learn from our guests every single week. I'm your host, Shane Larson, and I'm helping you see sports through a different lens. What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Gametime Guru Podcast. I am your host. As you guys know by now, Shane Larson is my name. 4.5, almost 5 years running. We've hit 70,000 downloads, 92 different countries. We continue to grow the show here on the platform, and it's due in large part to the listeners out there, due in large part to the guests, all those who have ever tuned in. Thank you so much. And for those who are tuning in maybe for the first time right now, this might be the first episode you've ever heard. I'd really appreciate it if when the interview's completed, leave me a review on Apple Podcasts. It helps the show grow. It helps to get out to more people, and it helps more people hear from our guests and get their story here on the platform. So today's an exciting one for me. For those who have followed me on social media, they know that I like to interact with people, but I also love to consume content. I'm a sports junkie. I'm an athlete myself, former player, former boxer. I love it, and I still cover sports at a high degree. And I love consuming content from athletes and former athletes and whatnot. So I'm always constantly on different platforms checking stuff out. So I'm on TikTok of all places, and I come across this guy's page, and I listened to him. It was one of the very first post I ever saw from you on TikTok. It was when you were answering a question from someone, and it had to do with your playing career. And I'm like, oh, dude, this is it. This is the stuff that I enjoy listening to. So I'd been following you for probably a good month or so before I reached out to you. But his name is Walker Hartman, and Walker's going to be joining us to share some more about his story, so you guys can hear from him some of the life lessons that he's learned and his playing days and what he does now. So Walker, thanks so much for joining us, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, brother. Absolutely. So before we even get further into this, tell everybody your TikTok handle and your other social media handles so that they can, follow you as well before we get too deep. So I want people to already know where they can follow you.
Oh, so my TikTok, I'm pretty sure is Walker Hartman, 05. And then my Instagram is PurgeWalk, PURGE_walk 05. Those are really the two social medias I'm really big on. I'm about to start up some YouTube stuff. I got some stuff planned. As soon as I can get a guy to help me film it and edit it, I got a lot of stuff planned. So follow me on YouTube too, just Walker Hartman. A lot of basketball content, workout content, stuff like that.
I dig it. I'll put that in the description here as well so people can find you quicker. And hopefully they'll enjoy the content the same way that I'm enjoying the content, man. I love hearing people's stories, love learning from people who have been there. It's one thing to talk, but somebody who's actually walked the walk and has been there, I trust those people a little bit more as an athlete myself. So, I want to rewind the clock, Walker, a little bit before we talk about your collegiate playing days and what you're doing now. I want to talk about your upbringing and your history in sports. What age did you pick up a basketball? What was the first age when you picked up a basketball that you can remember?
So I'm pretty sure when I first started playing basketball, I was in the 3rd grade. It's actually kind of crazy because my dad's a 6th degree black belt. So when I was 3 years old, I was in martial arts, heavy. I was at every class, and I was in the beginner classes, the advanced classes. I got up to a brown belt by the time I was 10 years old. Then once I hit 3rd grade, I went to my first basketball practice, and I fell in love with it. I loved everything about it. I loved being around my friends. I loved, just everything about it. And I kind of took my hard work and my work ethic that I used in martial arts, and I kind of put all of that into basketball. So I gave up my karate gi and my karate belt, and I picked up some basketball shoes and the basketball. And when I was in 3rd grade, and that's really where it all started.
Man, the rest was history. That is interesting. You mentioned, you took the hard work ethic that you had from the martial arts experience at a young age. Your father obviously really big into martial arts. Can you talk about some of the parallels? Like when you say you took the work ethic and whatnot, what is one of the parallels, or what are some of the parallels between martial arts and basketball that you could share with others that you can take this and apply it here, even though it's not the same exact discipline?
Right. So it's funny you say something about that, because when I first went to my first school that I played basketball at, my dad made this sappy post about how you know even though our hardwoods, like our dojos are different, so his hardwood is obviously like a karate dojo, and then my hardwood is a basketball court. We still have the same mindset about how we go about it. So really, like, attention to detail is huge, and being able to kind of take in information is huge. Like karate is it's kind of like an art. It's not really, my dad is really big into the art of it, not necessarily the sport. So it's very attention to detail, and you have to. It's kind of like you're trying to better yourself every time you go into a karate dojo. It's very it's very big on discipline, very big on trying to do the right thing, not necessarily using karate to be cool, but using karate to better yourself. So I mean, I kind of took that into basketball with me. That's kind of one of the biggest things I took with me from that.
No, I dig that. I dig that a lot. The discipline factor is, and it's interesting that I'm talking to you. I'm learning these things as we speak. I started in Kempo karate when I was younger, did a little bit of Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and then I ended up boxing. I loved throwing hands. So like that was it was a controlled way of doing that. You know what I mean? So I love boxing. So I fought for Golden Gloves for 3 years, and I love that. But I could tell you right now, as well as playing basketball, and one of the things that I always learned as well was not only just discipline, like understanding. I learned respect for my opponents, respect for not only my opponents but my instructors. You don't really get to back talk your karate instructor. You don't get to back talk your boxing coach. That just doesn't fly in those types of settings. Whereas you see a lot of times, in these traditional sports like basketball, football, baseball, whatever, you'll see guys popping off to their coaches. And I get it, because we get frustrated with our coaches. That's natural. But you don't get to pop off to a coach and expect to be playing the next day. That just doesn't work that way, or at least not have any kind of repercussion. And one thing that, like those different, arts, whether it be boxing, karate, jiu-jitsu, whatever it was, I always learned just, respect for my authoritative figure. You know what I mean? Like you just listen to them, whether you agree with them or not. You do what they do, and you don't ever pop off in a public setting, like in front of other people. Like that's just not how you do it. Did you ever notice that? Like, cause I'm sure you had a lot of coaches for basketball growing up. Did you ever notice that was part of the whole thing too, that you might've taken without even realizing it?
I was, I'm being completely 100% honest. I was not very coachable, especially when I got into college. When I was in high school and middle school, I was very coachable. I had 3 different coaches when I was in high school, though, so I think that was a little contributing factor to that. Just because coaches are different in pretty much every. All 3 of my coaches were different in every aspect. My very first coach was very big on discipline, not talking back to him, and we do as he says. If we do something wrong one time, we run. My second coach really was kind of like he didn't really care attitude. He just kind of wanted to coach us for 2 years and then go on back to his school and coach at the high school he graduated at. So he wasn't really big on yelling at us or anything like that, and it kind of showed in our record, to be honest. And my third coach, he wasn't really that big into discipline, but he helped me out a lot with the confidence aspect. But when I got to college, my freshman year, I just got this attitude because, when you go from high school, you're kind of like the guy. I was one of the top 3 guys on my high school team. I go to college and I go to NAIA school. I'm like, I should be the best player here. I'm not going D1, so, these aren't the best of the best, quote unquote. But I go to college and I'm frustrated because I can't do the things that I thought I was going to be able to do as soon as I get there. So I'm, mouthing off to the coach, mouthing off to my teammates, pulling people by their jersey, pulling them down, getting in arguments, physical altercations. So a lot of the stuff that I took from karate, because my dad would talk to me about this sometimes, talk about my attitude, and he says, he would just kind of harp that, the discipline aspect in karate should be the same in life in general. So I should take that to basketball too. And my attitude, I kind of got it down my senior year when I was a lot more coachable. I know I tried to understand my role more, respect my coach a little more, but it definitely took me a while.
That is interesting though, because it is hard, that whole concept, and I'm glad you brought that up because I want to talk about this. A lot of guys, especially when you get to that next level of basketball, that's the thing. It doesn't matter if it's a junior college, an NAIA, D1, D2. It doesn't matter. The next level of basketball is better than your high school level. So you are going to be going against better competition and different coaching styles, and it's just a different game. And there's an adjustment period there. I was talking last year. I talked to Coach Colby Blaine, who coaches for the College of Idaho here where I live, out of Idaho, which is an NAIA school as well. And then we have NNU. And then I just spoke to Jalen Galloway, who is now going to be playing at a school, I think, University of Louisiana, New Orleans, which is another NAIA school. And they just merged. But what school did you go to for NAIA? That's the first question I wanted to ask. What school were you at?
So I started off at Judson University, which is up in Elgin, Illinois, which is like kind of right outside Chicago. So it's kind of like a suburb of Chicago. And then the other NAIA school I went to was Lincoln Christian in Lincoln, Illinois, and I finished out my last 2 years there of my playing career. I started out at Judson, but I didn't actually play at Judson. I was a redshirt, so I didn't play any games at Judson. But, those are the two NAIA schools I went to. And in between that, I went to a USCAA school, which is kind of comparable to NAIA talent level-wise.
Okay, cool. And was this before the NAIA merger? Was this where there was a Division I, Division II before it merged? So were either of those schools Division I or Division II?
They were both Division II NAIA schools.
Cool. And so I'm just trying to set the tone for the audience so they understand like where you were playing at and whatnot, and understand like I want to get your thoughts here. Then Walker, you get in there, you've obviously already kind of alluded to it, like the talent level. So many people. This is what I hate about sports is like these casual fans. If you're not D1, you're trash. That is absolutely false, completely inaccurate to me. There are so many hoopers at every level. So when you were playing in NAIA, besides yourself, who was the best player that you played with or against?
I think the best player I played with, and this dude was the most humble. He didn't talk trash. We went to a Christian university, so I never heard this man cuss. But he was constantly giving people 25, 30, pretty much every game throughout his career, and he in the most humble way possible, the quietest, like 30 points that you could ever watch someone score and be like, oh yeah, it's 30. His name was Zach Thompson, and he scored 2,000 plus points at LCU at Lincoln Christian, and man, when he was about 6'4", and he played like power forward, small forward for us. So if you were driving and you kicked it out to Zach, you knew it was going to be a bucket, because he was like a 50, 40, 90 type of guy. One of the just so efficient, a knockdown shooter. He had a really good post game. And, I mean, he was giving people, 25, 30, like I said, without having really any handles or any flash to his game. It was just, the simple stuff. He just was really good at the simple stuff. And, I mean, I think Zach definitely could have been a Division I basketball player, especially, some of the guys I see. Kyle Korver really doesn't dribble the ball much. He made millions of dollars just pretty much shooting the ball and one dribble pull-ups his whole career. So, yeah, Zach was a stud, and he had some games that I was like, man, this kid can play.
That's crazy. Is there any game in your college career that just sticks out to you that you'll probably remember forever? And that could be whether it was like a performance that you put on or a performance that a teammate like Zach put on or anything like that. Anything that sticks out to you, one of the memories of your college career?
I think one of my best games was senior year. Because my junior and senior year, I struggled a lot because, like I said, I transferred into a school that already had their guys set. And I get there, and I'm like, man, like I should be the best player here, this, that, and the third. And I kind of let that hinder me a little bit. But my senior year, we're playing against Maranatha, and everything I feel like just clicked for me. I only shot the ball 6 times, but, I mean, I made all 6 of my shots, had 19 points. And there's one play that I remember a lot because my roommate, one of my best friends to this day, I talk to him every day. We're getting pressed full court because we're up by like 10 in the second half, and I hit someone with a spin move, and then I break a trap, and then I throw like it might have been a left-handed or right-handed, but it was a bounce pass from all the way from behind half court. my friend catches it, and he just goes up and just dunks it, and that was his second dunk of the game. And the crowd was going crazy. We had a decent crowd show out usually, even though we're an NAIA school, and the crowd was going crazy. People were standing up, the bench was going crazy. That's probably one of my favorite games I ever played.
That's so dope. Those are the types of memories that never go away, and that's what makes sports so amazing. Is you can remember those times. You can remember exactly where you were at. You can remember the crowd, the atmosphere, everything that was going on. And you got teammates to go along with you there too that you can talk to about that. I want to know this too, going from high school to the collegiate level. Now I coach AAU club ball here out of Idaho with the 16, 17-year-old kids. Like we got the kids going into their junior and senior years of high school. And I try to preach this to them, Walker. I'm always like, listen, you've got to put in the work. Like the days of, hey, I have a summer break where I'm just not going to touch a basketball for 3 months. Those are gone. If you truly intend on playing at the next level, you got to understand the work that's going to be required. And the days of, oh, my basketball practice during season, that's enough for all what I need to get in for the day. I was like, if you truly are taking it serious, you've got to be putting in the individual work. You got to sacrifice some of your nights and some of your mornings. You're going to be having to put some work in. So I want to talk to you about that work ethic. We talked about it earlier in the interview when you brought your work ethic when you were a younger kid from the karate aspect, but your work ethic, what did that consist of? Going through high school, going through college, what did you have to do to be able to continue to elevate your game?
So I grew up in a really big basketball area. Peoria, Illinois is a huge basketball area. I was born in Peoria, and then my parents moved us like 30 minutes outside the city to Glassford, Illinois, which is a very blue collar, get it how you live, work hard every day type of mentality. People out there work 7 days a week, 16-hour days. My dad was really like that. My dad, he was a police officer for the city of Peoria. And I mean, there were many weeks where he was, pulling 7 days a week with multiple 16-hour shifts in there just so we could, do the things we wanted to do and had everything we needed. So I kind of tried to take that because I really love basketball so much. I tried to take, what I saw my dad doing with karate, with work, and just, I tried to kind of have that blue collar work ethic in basketball. So, I mean, when I was in high school, I was waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, my freshman year all the way through my senior year, at least 3 times a week, getting in there before school. Sometimes having to break into the school. I actually got in trouble a couple of times for being in there because, there's no authoritative figure in there. But I was getting on the shooting gun. I was lifting. I was doing skill work. And this is all in high school. This is all before I knew what to do. I was working really, really, really hard, but I was kind of doing the wrong things. I didn't really have guidance. No one in my family played basketball. I was kind of just, shooting in the dark, just trying to work on things that I thought I had to work on. And, some of it translated, but some of it didn't. When I got to college, my work ethic kind of shifted a little bit. I was still putting in a lot of hours, but I actually linked up with a trainer from Peoria, and he kind of showed me how to work hard, but how to work smart as well. His name was Justin Dame. He went to Richwoods High School in Peoria, then went to Furman in South Carolina and played there for 4 years. He really showed me how to work on game situations, because you see all these trainers nowadays, and to what you said, you can't just go to practice nowadays. You got kids that are 7 years old doing skill work that are dribbling basketball better than I could when I was in high school. Right now, the game has really changed, and if you don't have any type of drive, if you think you want to play college basketball, but you're not putting in any extra work outside of just basketball season, you're really not going to be successful unless you have a crazy amount of natural talent, and that's a 1 in a million type of thing. So Justin really showed me how to work on my game, and so that way it translates to the actual games. I was doing a lot of in-game stuff. I wasn't doing 17 dribbles to get off one mid-range jump shot. Everything was catch and shoot, catch and shoot, catch and shoot. Everything was 1 dribble pull-up. Everything was 2 dribbles, hit a move, go for a layup. It was really – this is one of the things where I was talking about translates from karate. It's really precise. Your workout should really be geared towards what you're going to do. Karate, you're working on being efficient, snapping into your moves. being, just doing the best you can be. And so it can translate into real life. And then that's how basketball was in your workouts. You need to, work towards what you're going to do in a game.
I love that you just said that. Everything you just said right there, I'm just sitting here like taking notes mentally. I hope everybody who's listening to this episode, especially if you're one of the guys that I coach, pay attention to that piece. You got to be doing stuff that's going to be applicable to the game setting. A lot of kids, man, I'll be honest, Walker, like as I'm 33 now, but like I still play the game. I still compete as much as I possibly can, but like I'm around the game all the time, especially from a media perspective. Some kids are sitting there, they're dribbling it between their legs 3 or 4 times, boom, 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 and then they do a little fadeaway jumper, and I'm like, okay, that's cool and flashy and all, but that's literally, and then you see them get in the games, and they can't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like they don't understand the speed of the game. Like you got to understand how to practice like you play. And sometimes that does take a trainer. I'm glad that you gave a shout out to your trainer, because for the trainers out there that can actually help elevate the game, find a trainer. If you don't know how to do it yourself, find a trainer. And if you think you're doing it right, still find a trainer and see if you were doing it right, because I promise you probably are going to find out like, oh, I wasn't doing this all the way that I probably should have been doing it. Trainers can help elevate your game so much. I want to talk about the speed of the game. Even at the junior college level, some junior colleges, I should say, not every, high school to junior college. High school, depending on the school you go to, where you grow up, there's some good competition. There can be, depending on the level, classification, all this stuff.
Right.
But even at the junior college level, going to NAIA, D1, D2, whatever, the speed of the game changes. And I want to talk to you about that. Did you ever notice the speed of the game changing from when you went from high school into the next level? And if it did, how did you adjust to it?
Oh man, the speed of the game was, when I got to college, man, I thought I was in shape. I thought I was ready for what was about to happen. But man, the speed of the game, it's crazy, because when you get to college, you got a shot clock. You can't just, pass the ball around for 2 or 3 minutes to find a good shot. You got 30 seconds, and it seems like a long time, but it's really not. That 30 seconds goes quick. It takes you 8 seconds sometimes to get the ball up the court, get the offense set. Now you're down to 15 already. And yeah, the speed of the game, it changed a lot for me, especially coming from a small town. I didn't go to any of the city schools. I went to my school was 1A, which is the lowest class you can have. So we did play. I did play against a lot of other college level guys that went on to play college, had good college careers. But I mean, I don't know what level your high school was, but for me, a lot of the time we had, we were playing schools that hadn't won a game in a year, basically, or a long time. Schools that win 1 game a year, 2 games a year, and we're beating them by 50. You can pretty much go in the game and do whatever you want at that point. Our 1 through 12, my high school, the guys could go into those games and just, pretty much score whenever they wanted to. And we had about 3 or 4 or 5, 3 to 5, schools on our schedule that was like that. In college, I mean, like I said, even if it's a bad college team, those guys were still the guy in high school. Those guys were still, the best player on that team in high school. And, that's one thing I try to harp, because I coached 17U AAU for a year, and man, that I was only 21 when I did that, and that was difficult. But I tried to tell those guys, like, AAU's cool. Your high school, you guys are the guys in high school. That's all good. But when you get to college, everything changes. You go back to square one. You have to relearn the game pretty much, because what you learned in high school is not what you're gonna take with you to college.
That is so, it's so good. Everything you're saying is just like breaking everything down for me that I love to hear, man, because it just shows like people who've been there understand it. I remember there was one time, so our particular high school that I graduated from and I played for, we were 5A. So it's the biggest one that we have in Idaho. Keep that in mind. It's Idaho, right? But our school, 2,200 people, 2,500 people. Our actual graduating class was 1,000 people. So it was a bigger school. And we're playing some big schools, and we finished 4th in state that year. It was a good year for us, my senior year in high school. But I remember we had a couple of us playing at a local gym, a couple of my buddies and I, and the local college, Boise State University, which is where I graduated. But Boise State had some of their ballers over there getting ready for a pro-am tournament that they were playing in. And so they were just playing some pickup ball with us, warming up. And the difference, I mean, these dudes are 2 years older than me. They're not that much older than me, but the difference in the way they use their body, the difference in the way they moved their body, like it's just, they're Euro steps before Euros were actually a thing back then. Like they could Euro, They could shift with their body. They're only 2 inches taller than me too. And I'm like, dang, dude, they just seem so much bigger, stronger, and faster, more agile. And what was crazy to me, Walker, is they were like, when I watch them against other colleges, I'm like, they're not that great of shooters, these particular players that I was talking about. But when they were playing against us, it's like they wouldn't miss. I'm like, freaking A, dude. Like, and that's because they're getting up 500 shots a day and they're doing these things and they're learning the game. And I'm like, there was a huge difference there to me that showed me, I'm like, yeah, I'm not ready for Division I basketball, because they're lower tier Division I basketball and they're freaking out here just completely owning the court.
I think that's one of the crazy parts about, college basketball players in general. You could take the worst player on a D3 team. He could go to this local gym and kill everybody. You know what I'm saying? Like, even the guys that don't get in the games a lot are still going to local rec leagues, summer leagues, YMCA leagues, and are one of the best players because they're still putting in that work too. Throughout all levels of college basketball, D1, D2, D3, NAIA, JUCO, the Christian schools, those guys are still college basketball players playing against other college basketball players for 4 years. And I think that that's a misconception that, especially for me, I'm a white dude that goes to these gyms that played NAIA basketball. People look at me like, man, you suck. We're not gonna pick you up. And I get on the court and I do some stuff, and they're just like, wow. Like where'd you play at, this, that, and the third? And they're like, you didn't play D1, you didn't play D2. I'm like, no, I didn't. And people get these conceptions in their head that it's D1 or bust. But I know a lot of NAIA guys that are going pro right now. This summer, I know for a fact there were 3 NAIA guys that had NBA workouts, that were in NBA workouts with NBA teams. Talking about getting drafted. There was one guy who plays for the Mavericks now. I'm really invested in NAIA basketball. I love seeing dudes who played at the same level I play at go on and do more. Just so, because that's kind of like my proof right there. That's a fact. I can tell you a fact about an NAIA basketball player that had NBA workouts, that was going to go to the NBA, that is in the NBA right now, and you can't really rebuttal that at all. So, there's one dude that plays for the Mavericks right now. He actually just signed a contract, so he's actually on the team. I think he's going to be a two-way player, but, I mean, still.
That's a big-time contract. That's big. That's playing professional sports, the sport that you love. You're getting into the professional level. Like, and one thing that I also, like, people look down on NAIA ball sometimes. I'm not saying everybody does, because that's part of, like, what I want to do with my show is, like, talk to people like yourself who can educate, the casual fans. But some people look down on NAIA the same way they look down on playing professional basketball overseas. And I'm like telling people, I'm like, listen, so I had people on my show that play overseas. I'm like, they're making more money than the majority of the public here in the United States, because it's tax-free and they're getting their homes paid for. So like $100,000 overseas is like $250K here in the States, because you're not getting taxed on it. I'm like, you got to understand the logistics, understand. And they're playing ball, and it's actually not bad basketball. There's some good leagues overseas, even the lower tier, some good hoopers overseas, whether they're American or they're not. There's some good hoopers. So like, people just look down on this stuff, and there's no reason to be looking down. There are some hidden gems, if you will, all across. There's hoopers all over the place. And that's what's super, super cool. Now, tell the listeners real quick, Walker, how tall are you, and what position do you play? Because we never even touched base on that.
I'm I on the basketball rosters in college, the tallest I've been, I think I was 6'3" one year on the roster. I'm really about like 6'1", 6'2", or 6 foot 6'1", if we're being realistic. Without shoes on, maybe 5'11". But basketball coaches, they love to kind of fudge those a little bit. I had a couple of teammates that was like 5'6". They listed them at 6 foot on the roster. So realistically, I'm about 6 foot. That's
6 foot. You play point guard?
I'm more of a scorer. I was more of a shooter. So I'd say shooting guard, small forward a little bit. Sometimes I even played the 4 just so I could, pop out on screens and have a little mismatch against, bigger, slower guys. But I'd say I was pretty much a shooting guard, a 2 for the most part.
I dig that. Okay. So talk to us about that. A lot of the guys I coach, for example, and in Idaho, we don't have a ton of big men. That's being real. We have a couple guys across the valley that are, 6'11", 6'10", that are pretty solid posts that will be good in college. But the majority of our guys are 6'5" and under. And a lot of our posts are like 6'5". And I'm like, you go to the college level, you're going to have to play the wing at some point. Like, you can't just always muscle guys down in the post at the college level. But talk to the guys that are, 6'2" and under. Everybody talks about this. It's very difficult because there's a ton of 6'2" and under guys, tons and tons across the world, trying to get looks for college. what does it take? Being 6'2" and under to get looks, even at the NAIA level, what does it take to be able to get a look from them? Like, what are you going to have to do to prove your worth? Because there's not as many big guys as there are small guys.
It's crazy because I just seen something on TikTok about this dude talking about what he thinks that people should really work on right now as guards. Shooting threes is huge in basketball now. If you're not, a 30 is pretty low, but if you're not a 33+% shooter, you're gonna have to do something else really well in order for a coach to want to spend money on you to get you to go to their school. I was a little different. I loved playing defense because, like I said, in high school, I was one of the guys, quote unquote, maybe, but I was like on offense, I was like a third option, a fourth option. I had some really good games where I scored a lot of points, but that wasn't every game because I had 2 or 3 guys in front of me that were just lights out shooters, big guys that could just score. So I had to really find out what my identity was going to be as a basketball player. And I really like two-way guards. I like guys who can score, who can play offense, but I like guys who can also play defense, like guys like Klay Thompson. I think Bradley Beal is a really underrated, two-way guy. He really gets after it on defense. That's kind of what I made my identity. I'm a really intense player, so I tried to separate myself. A lot of guys, when I was coming up, a lot of dudes tried to separate themselves by wearing the lime green shoes. Like, oh, I'm gonna stick out to a coach wearing this shooting sleeve or these, this leg sleeve. I'm gonna stick out that way. I talked a lot of trash. I played really ferocious defense. If I scored, the other person was gonna know about it. If I stopped, gotta stop, the other person was gonna know about it. I really tried to separate myself that way. So if I would say to high school guys, you got to find your identity. You have to be really good. If you're really good at one thing, you will play in college and you will get minutes in college. I averaged like 6 points per game, maybe less than that, probably 4 points per game in high school. And my redshirt freshman year, they don't have all the games in my game log, so it says I averaged like 5 points per game. But I was averaging like 8 to 10 points per game my redshirt freshman year when I was at my school in Peoria. So I went from being a 4 point per game scorer in high school to averaging 8 to 10 in college. So just because you do one thing in high school doesn't necessarily mean that that's what your identity is going to be all through college either. But you really just have to sit down with yourself and be realistic with yourself and just find something that you're really good at and just work tirelessly on that.
I dig that. I as a shooter myself, like I always tell the kids, like, that's a huge piece. Like you just mentioned it too, like shooting. Like I shot 47% from the 3-point line my senior year in high school. Like that's what I that's what I did. I shoot, but there's a lot of places where I lack. I'm not going to get flashy. I'm not going to beat you off the dribble. I got a 1-2 dribble max, and then I'm shooting or I'm passing. That's kind of how I've always been. And I'll muscle up on defense. I was always told this is the thing. That was my I was limited on offense. I could shoot the ball, and that was what I was trusted to do. We drew up plays for me, and it's great. But on defense, if I got mismatched, I'm only 6'2", but I'm 6'2", 225, and I would, they put me on the post and let me bang with the guys down low and try to make it physical for them. And so that's where I kind of I love how you're talking about two-way players. I'm not the fastest guy on the wing playing defense, but I will do my best to lock somebody up if I can. But I can bang in the post, and that's super important. I try to tell the kids that not everybody's going to shoot 47% from the 3-point line. That's just not realistic, especially at the high school level. But if you can get into the 35 percentile range and be pretty consistent with that, and I love that because I always tell them too, I'm like, lock in on defense, be a two-way player. Like you've got to be good at these things if you want to separate yourself. Because coach, they're going to look all around. They're going to say, well, that guy's he's 5'11", 6 foot. Like, what makes him different than somebody else? You better stand out somehow. Sometimes that two-way player is a good way to go too. Like they'll see that you're putting effort in. I think that's so dope. Now, I want to ask you, Walker, what was the best advice a coach ever gave you?
Best advice a coach ever gave to me. So the best advice I ever got, I didn't actually take into consideration. So like I said, I had 3 different basketball coaches. The best advice I think I ever got was from the coach who really didn't care a lot my sophomore and junior year. He told me, he told me he thought I was a really, really good player, but I tried to do too much. I tried to be too flashy. And he was like basically an All-American in high school, played at Bradley University, played overseas. He was a guy that knew what he was talking about. But I'm like, nah, man, I see all these Balls Life mixtapes. I see, John Wall doing tween step backs and stuff like that. So that's what I think I got to do to play at that level. And he told me, he was like, keep it simple, stupid. So I kind of go by that now. It's KISS, but it's keep it simple, stupid. The game is honestly, basketball is a really simple game. If you break it down, basketball can be one of the easiest games, to play, to move up on, because everything you do, there's a formula to it. There's really a science to basketball. Knockdown shooter, having a good basketball IQ, which is just playing the game, learning how to play defense, learning how to rebound, all that stuff you can do. You can't really, there are some things that you don't have control over, how tall you are, how high you can jump. To a certain extent, you can work on your vertical, but a lot of guys are blessed naturally with that stuff. But if you can find a way to simplify your game and be really efficient at the easy things, you're going to be a 20-plus point per game scorer, just because if you know your spots on the floor and you work on those spots and you're efficient at those spots, the game slows down. We talked about how when you get to college, the game speeds up for you. Well, if you get to college and then you just kind of sit back and watch a practice, when you're a freshman, if you just kind of watch everything happen, it's really the same thing. Just everyone is a little better. Everyone's a little better. So when your workouts, you need to find your spots, and that like going from high school to college, figure out if you're going to have, the same spots or this, that, and the third. And actually what I would do is I would watch college games of the teams that I was on and see kind of how they operate, how they move, what kind of offenses they run. And I would try to figure out who I was going to be with that team.
I dig that, man. That is keep it simple, stupid. I like that. Keep it simple, stupid. KISS. That's super sick. Simplify the game. I think a lot of people do overanalyze it, overthink it. When you can do that, I've seen guys even at the level that I coach now, and I think this goes along with what you're saying, is they might lack athleticism. There's a couple guys that I coach. They have a really good IQ. One in particular has a really good IQ. He understands where he's supposed to be, and he plays hard. So he understands how to do the basic things, such as rebounding the basketball, which apparently is a lost art in today's world with some of these kids. Right. I think they don't need to do it. But boxing out, you learn how to box out, you can find a spot on the court probably, because a lot of kids forget that. But I saw him even just last night. We're recording this on a Thursday. I was watching him last night on a Wednesday. He learns the simple things, and he's out there able to compete, and he's getting minutes because he figured it out. He's not the most athletic guy on the court. He's not the best basketball player on the court, but he's not a liability either. He's actually someone that you want on the court because he knows where he's supposed to be. I think that's awesome. And it just, when you were saying that, keep it simple, stupid, that's exactly what I was thinking of. I was thinking of this particular player. Huge shout out to him. I'm going to tag him in this when we post this podcast, because he deserves to hear that, because he's the one who does that exact same thing. Now, Walker, I want to ask you this. What is next for you? I followed you on TikTok, so I kind of see what your story is, and I'd encourage everybody else to do that too. I'm not trying to I want you to be able to share that on your own platform, but I want to know, people are probably is he going to continue playing? Is he going to train? You had mentioned earlier you're going to try to get onto YouTube. So is that kind of what you're trying to do? How do you want to be an influence in the basketball world moving forward?
I think that, my time of trying to go overseas or, play professionally is very limited, especially because my stats weren't that good in college. So not a lot of overseas teams wanted to take a chance on me when I first came out, 2 years ago. They were like, well, you got good highlights, but that doesn't tell the whole story, which is true. A lot of guys, my highlights are crazy good, but if you look at my stats, you're like, oh, wow. I thought you were a 10 plus, 12 plus point per game scorer, and I really wasn't. I've recently found FIBA 3-on-3 tournaments, which are tournaments that you can, I guess you can kind of say, are pro tournaments. A lot of pro guys play in these because the prize money is pretty crazy. I mean, you can make $800 to $1,000 per player on your 3-on-3 team in a day, basically, which is, I think that's pretty good.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't even make that in a week. So I got a pretty good team coming together for that. What I want to do with YouTube is I want kids like me to see my YouTube. Kids that didn't have a lot of basketball direction or even sports direction in general. I preach this on my TikTok. I tell people that, learn from my mistakes. I want kids to hear my story, hear what I went through, hear what I did, hear what I did wrong, hear what I did right. And I want them to kind of take that and hear it and then mold their own basketball career or sports career out of that. You'd be surprised. I have a lot of kids hitting me up, say, hey, I started doing this, and that I saw from your video, and I got an offer, or I just committed to this school, or I'm talking to a couple of NAIA schools that I emailed because you told me to. I love stuff like that. I think like that is the most humbling, but one of the best feelings in the world, just because I want to help kids that don't have a lot. Like, I mean, I had a really good family. We didn't have a lot of money. I could only play AAU for half a summer because, it got so expensive. If I would have had someone in my life like me, I guarantee, and that sounds, really cocky, but just having that direction, I think that I would have been a D2, D1 level type of player. Just because I would have learned all this stuff earlier. I would have been told all this stuff before I had to learn it myself. And I really just, especially with this YouTube stuff, I kind of want to show people, some, beneficial workouts. I want to go do a day in the life of an NAIA player, go through workouts with NAIA teams, go through open gyms with them, maybe, go through practice. I want to, go to D2 schools and do the same thing, D3 schools. I want to show kids that basketball is, there's a lot of talent in basketball at all levels. And to get there, you have to, kind of create your own formula. So that's kind of what I want to do. And if I start winning a bunch of FIBA 3-on-3 tournaments and, my team qualifies to go to the Olympic trials, who knows? Maybe, I got a pretty solid team right now. One of my friends, he's a pro, played in Columbia last year, and the other guys are both college athletes. So who knows? We'll have to see where it goes.
Sky's the limit there, dude. I'm a huge fan of 3-on-3 basketball personally. Like, I still compete in all the tournaments that we got locally. I go to Hoop Fest in Spokane, up in Washington. I love 3-on-3 basketball. We even have a city league here in Boise, Idaho. That's 3-on-3 city league. So we play 8 weeks of 3-on-3 ball. Like, I love the 3-on-3 game. It's a different type of game, but for a shooter like myself who likes to just get volume shots up, like it plays to my game. So I enjoy it. That's actually pretty dope. I am inspired by you, Walker, because I think so many people need to have someone like you were just saying. It's not cocky. It's not that. It's a confidence and an understanding that you truly do have a unique skill set that you can get out there. And I actually appreciate the fact that you're willing to share that. Like, TikTok videos, that's dope. Like, a kid's going to come across those TikTok videos, someone like myself, but like maybe a younger guy who can really benefit from like the stuff that you're sharing, and they're still in their playing career. That's huge. A lot of people might have the knowledge that you have, but they are too apprehensive. They don't want to share it. They're scared to share it for some reason. You're creating content to help other people. I think that's dope. You're utilizing your platform and your knowledge. I think more people should do it, but I'm grateful that you're doing it. I think it's super dope. The last question I'm going to ask you, man, because dude, it's so sick talking to someone like yourself, because I think it's so cool. I want you to be able to showcase like NAIA ball, D1, D2, or whatever, like smaller D3, D2, smaller schools. Show the Hoopers. I think it's so sick that you're doing that. But last question that I have for you before we wrap this up is the biggest life lesson. I want to know the biggest life lesson that sports have taught you. What's the biggest life lesson?
I think the biggest life lesson that basketball has taught me was basketball doesn't owe you anything. Basketball doesn't, care how hard you work. It doesn't care if you're tired. It doesn't care, basketball doesn't care about you. You can put a lot of hours into basketball and still not make it. I'm not one of these guys that, will try to hinder younger athletes from wanting to go pro. I want everyone who wants to go pro, I want them to work as hard as they can, and hopefully they do make it pro. I'm not one of these guys that thinks, oh, I didn't make it, you can't make it. But I think basketball taught me that even in life, life doesn't really care if you're tired. Life doesn't care if you deserve it or not. life's just going to happen, just like basketball is just going to happen. You can do certain things within basketball and within life to set yourself up on the right path. But at the end of the day, life and basketball don't owe you a thing. You know, you can do everything you can in your power to, you know, try to do one thing, and it could play out a totally different way. So if you can understand that at an early age, I think that'll help a lot of kids out, because they think that they'll put in work and then they'll go into a game and it won't show. Well, you only worked on that for a week. You know, they say it takes 10,000 hours to perfect one skill. So if you're not putting in, you know, hours like that on something, then it's not something that happens boom. You know, basketball doesn't see you working on something and it's gonna be like, all right, well, you worked on this one day, we're gonna go in a game and we're gonna do it now. It doesn't work like that.
Oh, man, it's so dope. Like, life's not fair. Basketball's not fair all the time either. You can put all the work in, like you said, and it doesn't always play out the way that you want to. But if you understand that, it helps you weather the storms when they come at you like that, like those hard times. If you understand that earlier on and realize, okay, well, you're just going to have to trust the process, keep working, and realize, like, it's never going to be fair. I love that you just said that. It's such a good example, because life's the same way. It's never going to be fair. There's going to be times where it's good, but it's like peaks and valleys, you know, peaks and valleys. That's how it always is. But like they always say, if you didn't have this, if a heartbeat wasn't going like this and it was flatlined, you're dead. So you have to have those to keep living. You know what I mean? So it's just good to understand that and understand how to get through them. So Walker, I just want to say thanks, brother. It's been an honor chatting with you. I look forward to, you know, building a relationship outside the podcast, you know, just following you and seeing what you do and whatnot with basketball 3-on-3 and then with your YouTube channel and continuing content on your TikTok platforms, which by the way, guys, remember, we're putting them here in the description of the podcast so you guys can go there and follow him. But I just want to say thanks, man. I've had a blast chatting with you, and I just appreciate you joining the show.
Yes, I appreciate it. You know, podcasts like this are what I think they're going to help a lot of younger athletes to hear stories and testimonies of, you know, guys that are coaching, guys that are playing, guys that went through this and that. So platforms like this, I really appreciate as well. And you willing to put, you know, a no-name guy pretty much on your podcast. Really appreciate that. So thank you for that.
Oh, man, the story was awesome. It was an amazing story, and that's what I'm looking for, man. And I think it's super, super cool. And for all the listeners out there, hope you guys enjoyed it as well. And if you did, like I said in the very beginning of the show, make sure to leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Let us know what you think of the show. So the more reviews that come through on Apple Podcasts, the more the show gets out to people. That's how the algorithm works. So, guys, we got to play the game. Go leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Let us know what you thought about Walker's story, and we'll talk to you next week. Guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of my show. Now, if you could go and do me a favor, head over to iTunes, give me 5 stars, and leave me a review, it would be greatly appreciated. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your support.